Hello, this is Sharon Fitzpatrick. I'm the editor of Presentation Expert, and this is Dishing on Presentations with Adam Tratt from Haiku Deck. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Sharon. Thank you.
When my co-founders and I started out, I had two co-founders. One was a very talented designer, and one is my current CTO. And we were working on something completely different, celebrity-based Facebook games, believe it or not. And our designer was responsible for making all of our slides. And when that business faltered, he decided he wanted to move on to do other things. And that left my remaining co-founder and I responsible for making the investor presentation that was meant to shore up the confidence that our investors had put in us. And as we were working on that presentation for the first time without a professional in-house designer, we started to bicker with one another about who would have to make the slides. And we both know how to use PowerPoint. My first job out of college was working on Microsoft Office, and my co-founder as well worked at Microsoft. So the issue wasn't one of whether we knew how to use PowerPoint. It was just an issue of design skills and love of the process of making a presentation, a lack of love. and so in the midst of that bickering, we started to ask some questions. And Kevin asked me, isn't it weird that this is supposed to be the fun part of being an entrepreneur? This moment where we go and share our idea or tell our story and get other people excited about the same thing we're excited about. And isn't it a shame that when it comes time to sit down and do that, we're arguing over the process? And why is that? And what's broken about that? And at the same time that this was happening, the iPad was relatively new, and lots of people were buying them to read the New York Times and to watch Netflix in bed. Very few people were using them as tools for creation and productivity. And so we thought, what would it look like if we tried to reinvent presentations in the context of this new paradigm of mobile productivity? And so that was the kernel that led us to Haiku Deck. When we launched, we were iPad only. Now we have an iPad app, but we have even more users through our web app that you can use on any platform through Chrome, Safari on Mac, Firefox. And so over the course of 4.5 years, we've amassed about 2.2 million registered users, and tens of millions of slides have been created in Haiku Deck. And it has a lot to do with this moment where we realize that you shouldn't need a professional designer on your team in order to create a simple, effective, memorable, beautiful presentation.
So a lot of what we deal with today is kind of the visualization of data, the more idea of kind of personalizing data. What can you do with Haiku to support that? So
to be honest, when it comes to visualizing data, we offer some very simple tools for creating extremely simple pie charts, bar charts, or what we call infographics, or not infographics, we call them stat charts, that basically have a few simple numbers and some headers. For the more complex data storytelling, we handle it similarly as PowerPoint and Google Slides and Prezi and everyone else, in that we let you import your own images. So you save whatever chart you have, you save it as an image and just pull it into Haiku Deck.
So who do you think is the typical user then? Is there a job industry or a job title?
It's almost like a psychographic model rather than a demographic one. So, ultimately the product we design, and before we jump to who, I realize we haven't really talked about what it is that it does, what it is that makes it special. But fundamentally, we tried to productize the best practices in presentation creation. So we did a bunch of research. We found out what are the things that all the experts agree on, and there's 4 things. One idea per slide, try and simplify your message. So Haiku Deck helps you do that by limiting the number of words you can put on each slide. So we really force the author to think about, what is my big idea here, and how do I break up my more complex ideas into bite-sized nuggets. 2 is reinforce your idea with a powerful image. And I would say that the killer feature in our app is the image search. We offer 40 million beautiful, high-resolution Creative Commons licensed photos that are the right size and the right resolution and all that. 3rd thing is consistent formatting. We provide a bunch of themes so that you can't mismatch fonts and colors. And the last thing is, if you're going to use a chart, try to keep it simple. And we provide some touch-enabled, really easy drag and drop kind of bar chart, pie chart, things that I just mentioned. So that said, our typical user, as with presentations in general, there's 500 million presentation software users out there in the world. And it's an extremely diverse group. So about half of our users are in education. The other half are what we call professionals. Amongst the professionals, they are typically either small businesses who want to look professional but don't have the resources to hire a professional to create their presentations, or they are middle managers who want to get away from the corporate template. They explicitly don't want to use the brand guideline prescribed template that everybody at the company uses. So we call them communication rebels. The black turtleneck rebellious member of the sales team or the marketing team. And then we have a lot of folks that are in sales. So especially in fields like real estate, where you need to create image-rich presentations that not only are used in the typical presentation context, but also are digital assets that you can post to social media, that you can embed in your blog, that you can share easily in email, that you can create and show on a mobile device. You can imagine the life of a real estate agent. They don't have a designer on staff. They don't have the budget to hire a presentation expert. So they're stuck in an open house that all they have is their iPad or their iPhone. They've got a bunch of photos of a property that they want to list, and they can easily create a slideshow that really looks professionally done. Lots of folks in hospitality, so you can imagine if you're running the Sausalito Board of Tourism, and you want to create a bunch of digital assets or presentations that are going to make tourists want to come visit your cute little town, you could use Haiku Deck to easily do that. Social media marketers, content marketers, folks that just I think the conventional wisdom is that pictures perform better on Facebook, on Twitter, and certainly on Pinterest. And so we give people an easy way to string together a bunch of pictures that tell an effective story that make for good content in that regard.
So what's the oddest thing that anyone has, that you know of, as a case study of how they've used your technology?
Wow, oddest.
Or unique, a unique way that someone's used your technology.
Well, we've been surprised in a lot of ways. I mean, we definitely did not see we didn't expect at first the number of people who work for big companies to be using the app, because we know that, having worked at big companies ourselves, we know that typically there's a brand police officer who, doesn't want you using anything that looks different from the template, the corporate template. And so we were struck by the communication rebels who sort of throw caution to the wind and say, you know what, I know we have a template and I know we have approved fonts, but I want to tell a compelling story that departs from that. And we even have CEOs of big companies that use the app to do internal storytelling, to rally the troops in new ways. And they find that the simplicity and the sort of visual nature of our app helps them connect on an emotional level in a way that the standard template never does, right? So, and also, people who give TED Talks, we're always flattered by that. The CTO of the government of Australia uses Haiku Deck to talk about issues facing their government and his agency. That's probably one of our more prominent users. So those are some. And then we have kindergartners who use it to, make a deck about the metamorphosis of a, larva into a butterfly.
Oh, cool. So Language is sometimes an issue with when you go and present an audience, you may speak English, but the audience might speak Spanish. Microsoft just came out with their presentation translator. How do you handle translations?
We don't. I mean, that technology, I saw that too, that that translation engine is really slick, and I'm eager to see how it works in practice. I know it's not commercially available yet, right. But Microsoft has some amazing technology that they can deploy across a lot of different apps. I think, we're trying to address a much more fundamental issue, which is creating a presentation every day or when you need to create one. People, nobody has enough time to get their job done as it is. We're all overwhelmed, we're all overworked, and nobody wants to fiddle with software when they feel like they've got other more important things to do. So we unlike the vast majority of other presentation tools that try to mimic the features of PowerPoint, and if you think about it, the market, it exists of PowerPoint and 25 PowerPoint clones. And we went in the opposite direction. We're not trying to compete head-to-head with Microsoft. A lot of our users will create slides in Haiku Deck and export them to PPTX format so they can finish up in PowerPoint, and we think that's great. It's unlikely that we're going to have presentation translation in our app anytime soon, and we don't think that's important to most people most of the time. We think that that's a slick feature for some users very rarely, or for a tiny portion of people frequently.
So, I mean, I have my own business. I'm a consultant, and I find that I need to have both an iPad and an Android tablet. Now, I know you can use Haiku using the web engine on an Android. Any chance you're going to do an Android app at any time?
So, first of all, I didn't even know you could use the web app on Android. It's not something we recommend.
Okay.
We haven't tested it on Android. The short answer is, obviously we want to deliver it on Android, but we're tiny, and we've not announced that we're working on it or committed to any dates related to that. So we have a native iOS app that works on iPhone, iPad, and touch devices. We have our web app that works for anyone with a browser. At the moment, it's very expensive to develop for Android because there's so many different flavors of Android right now. And it's very expensive to support Android. And there's a lot of data that shows that Android users are less likely to pay for software than their counterparts on other platforms. So it's very difficult for a small software company like ours to go down that path, because, the worst thing that could happen is we get in over our head, and then instead of being really good at one thing, we're lousy at three things.
So let's look ahead a couple of years. What do you see changing in the presentation world, and how will that change your plans for the future?
Well, I mean, productivity is moving to the cloud, right? So if you think about PowerPoint, and I really don't mean to beat up on PowerPoint, but it is the sort of gold standard. PowerPoint was invented in the year 1992 as a replacement for the overhead projector. And in 1992, just to put it in context, that was 7 years before the Palm Pilot was invented. I mean, this is ancient technology history.
Wow.
The product is a good product, but it has not fundamentally changed in that time. And back in those days, and I can say this with authority because I used to work at Microsoft, and still to a certain extent today, the Office apps are designed for a desktop server environment where you're working on your computer and your work is local and it lives locally. And it's not designed with several major changes that have occurred in the past 25 years. Excuse me. For example, the internet now exists, and cloud computing now exists, and mobile is now a fundamental and important part of how we work and live. And so when we built Haiku Deck, we put those things at the center of the architecture. So your presentations are stored in the cloud so that you have access to them wherever. Now, I know that you can make presentations online and using PowerPoint and store them in the cloud, but it's not sort of native to the experience, and it doesn't feel native to the experience. We realized our vision as a company is we want to make it 10 times faster and easier for people to create presentations that are 10 times better. And one way we did that is by simplifying the product and really removing 90% of the features that you have in PowerPoint to make it easier. Now, some people, especially, perhaps a lot of your listeners are presentation experts who love all the richness of PowerPoint, and they might find what we built maddening. But a lot of people that are perplexed by the depth of functionality in PowerPoint will find our app refreshing. Like, oh, there's only a couple ways to do this. I don't have to be overwhelmed by a million different options. Some people in some circumstances really like that sparseness. So one thing that we did was the simplicity of the product and try and remove friction from presentations in that way. The second thing relates to this cloud computing idea, this notion that there's no need for your presentation to live in solitary confinement. And by developing a creative community around presentations, we can remove additional friction from the process. So let's say you go to a conference and at the end of the conference, you need to make a presentation that's going to brief your team on what you learned at the conference. Well, it's very possible, perhaps even likely, that someone else has already done that. They left the conference yesterday, they made the slides that you're about to work on for 45 minutes. Wouldn't it be nice if you could copy their slides and remix them and make them your own? And add your own, you add a few slides of your own, change some of the, some of the images perhaps. So we have this notion of being able to remix presentation content from our creative community. There are millions of publicly shared decks in our gallery that you can search for. You can find great decks and you're on your way. So that's the second thing. The third thing is probably the most exciting right now, and that's artificial intelligence. So we've got a technology that we call Zuru that can basically reads structured content and converts it into presentation material. And there are three ways that you can apply Zuru through our app. So I'll start with the obvious one. Let's say you have to make a presentation about a specific topic, and that topic exists on Wikipedia. You type in the topic name, and Zuru can parse that article, and it'll ask you, how many slides do you think you want? Do you want about 5? Do you want about 15? Do you want about 30? And based on your answer, it'll try to summarize the Wikipedia article into an outline. Then you can edit that outline, and then using all of the data that we've captured from all of our users about what ideas they match with what images, we can help you find the right images for that presentation. And it takes a process that millions of people do every day. And, depending on the topic and depending on the person, it can deliver your presentation in, a matter of a few minutes in a best case scenario. And for a lot of people, it'll save them at least 50% of the time that they would spend manually hunting for images or trying to copy and paste the right information from Wikipedia. And there's a lot of other hocus pocus artificial intelligence stuff that we do in there as well. Like we'll look at after you pick the images, we can look at the color palette of the pixels in that image, and we can try and choose the right color background and font colors so that it looks pleasing on the slide. We can do things like recognize faces in the image that you pick so that we can try not to put the words across a face in the image. So those are, when we look forward in the world of presentations, that, for us, it's all about how do we remove friction from the process by leveraging our assets, which include this artificial intelligence, the access to a community of folks that are sharing presentation content. And then an element of it is just making it fast and easy for people to get their idea from up here to out here.
I think that's great. I mean, I'll tell you, in another life, I've written a book called Open Textbook Tweet, and it was done for a Hewlett-Packard project on creating and distributing open textbooks by remixing, repurposing, and redelivering content and mixing it up into your own way. It sounds like, and a lot of it was based on Creative Commons. So it sounds like, you guys have really taken that up a level with what you've done, and it's fascinating. Congratulations.
Well, thanks. I mean, look, there's so much great content and digital assets out there on the internet, and just the photos alone. There's 40 million plus images that have been openly shared on, by photographers out there, and it's hard to find them if you don't know where to look, and it's hard to use them if you don't know the nuances of the license. Like, oh, you have to attribute the photo to the photographer. A lot of our users, if you ask our users, what is the killer feature in Haiku Deck? A lot of them say it's that we not only help you find those Creative Commons images, but we automatically pull in the attribution, so you don't have to go through that extra cumbersome step of figuring out who took this and where, what exact licenses, and copy and paste it and format it correctly on the bottom of your slide. That's a super annoying element of taking advantage of those assets.
Yeah, CC BY, CCSA. I mean, it's all very confusing. So it's great that you guys eliminate that space, that one step.
Right.
So,
and a lot of our users will just use Haiku Deck to find images, and then they export to PPTX format and, do the rest in another, using PowerPoint or whatever, Keynote, Google Slides.
We've talked to a lot of our subscribers, and we hear sourcing images is really one of the biggest needs. And how do you find it so you don't spend a fortune? I use Big Stock, and I pay monthly to use their service because I use it to reprint. And so I want to make sure that I am compliant as far as how it's done. But if you use Bing Pictures in PowerPoint, online pictures, you get some really great stuff from Creative Commons, and it's easy to use and it fits. I think the challenge is trying to find a way to make sure that the keywords that you feel are what would describe a picture is going to be what you get back as a result. And so that's sometimes one of the biggest challenges. What do you call it and how do you find it?
Yeah, that's true. But also, I haven't looked at Bing recently, but last I checked, you still had to go through that cumbersome process of copying and pasting the attribution, finding it and copying and pasting it, and then formatting it correctly on your slide. So there's a lot of little things, little like sort of technical elements of not only finding images, and then the other issue is we're filtering out, showing only images that are the right resolution.
Right.
And, like the number one thing we saw when we were user testing is a typical workflow is you have PowerPoint open in one window and you have either Google image search or Bing image search open in the other. And then you find the image and you right click on it, you save it, you pull it into your presentation, and then you go to stretch it and it gets all pixelated because it's the wrong size, or it gets warped because you don't know how to stretch it the right way. We're just, that's one little headache that we completely eliminate.
Well, this has been great. I know we're running short on time. I want to thank you for spending the time with us. If our subscribers want to get to know Haiku Deck, what do they do?
So there's a couple different ways. You can go to www.haikudeck.com, HAIKUDECK.com, and you can learn about us there. We're also in the iTunes App Store. If you search for Haiku Deck, you'll find us. You'll find our award-winning iOS app there. And once you register, you'll start getting lots of emails from me. Sorry in advance about that. But I do read your responses. So one of the things that I think we do really well is provide customer service. So I would encourage people to not only sign up, but also to provide feedback, because that's really helpful for us as we try and make the app better for everybody.
Well, the way I learned about your product was through my high school senior who was using it in school to work on a final presentation for science class. So I thought that's how I learned about it. So he's actually been teaching me how to use it, which has been fun.
Excellent. Well, I would love to hear his feedback.
Okay, I'll ask
if he's
him.
got any. Sharon, thank you so much for having me. I would love to offer your subscribers a coupon code for our web app. The code is capital M, capital P, capital C, 15. It's a web promo code. So when you subscribe via our website, that'll offer new subscribers 15% off a yearly subscription to our app. You have to use the code on the web, but it will apply to the iOS app as well. You cannot use the code on iOS just because of the way iTunes works.
Perfect. Thank you so much. One more question for you that's more a personal question. I do a ton of webinars. I probably do about 400 or 500 a year. Have you guys tried to use Haiku Deck in like a GoToWebinar or an On24?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of our users are doing that. When you create a Haiku Deck, you can not only share it online, but you can save it as a PPTX file or a PDF,
okay,
which is typically how most people do it. One thing that we're working on right now for the sort of immediate future is we're getting ready to launch a new set of functionality that lets you add audio to your slides and then save your slide deck as a video file.
Oh, nice.
Which I'm hoping will be really valuable to folks that do a lot of webinars. Because then you can very easily create a video asset for all kinds of online training.
Well, thank you so much for your time and have a great rest of your day. And I'm looking forward to playing more with the product.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It was really nice to meet you. I appreciate your time.
Oh, same here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good day.